Hello, welcome to my channel, welcome to my podcast. My name is Adam and I'm attempting to become the most prolific reviewer of all time. That means I want to have the most published reviews of anybody in history. My goal right now is 15,000. Today I am reviewing a movie from 2003. The movie is called Old Boy. And I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, but first I'm going to give you some warnings. I'm going to spoil some key details of the plot. So if you don't want to hear it, if you've never seen the movie, then maybe go watch the movie and come back and watch the review and give me your thoughts about it. So, Old Boy is basically a revenge story. It's centered around a character named O-Dae-soo. And O-Dae-soo, in the beginning of the film, he's out drinking with his friends, and he gets arrested, and he is released, and he is calling his family to let them know that he'll be back for the birthday of his daughter. But he basically gets kidnapped, and he is imprisoned in a sort of, it's not a prison, but it's like a private enterprise of a prison that punishes people for different reasons, and he's there for 15 years. And he basically goes a little bit crazy in this prison, and he tries to commit suicide. He fails, then he tries to become better and better at martial arts, and he tries to escape. But right when he's about to escape, he's released. So then he needs to, well, he doesn't need to, but he really desires revenge, and he has all of these lists of people who he might have wronged, and it's a really long list because it turns out after 15 years of introspection and reflection, he realizes he wasn't such a great guy. But he gets out and he is hungry and he wants to eat something. So he goes to this sushi restaurant, and he just says he wants to eat something alive. So he gets this octopus and he eats the octopus alive, which is something that happens in Korea. It's kind of like a sign of macho-ness to eat the live octopus. But he passes out, and it's a weird thing because I would imagine after eating the octopus and passing out that you would make the connection that the octopus killed the guy, but no, he just passes out. And for some reason, the woman who gave him the octopus brings him back to her apartment. And he wakes up, and she's really kind to him, and he attempts to assault her. And he doesn't. She fights him off. And this is the weird part about, I mean, there's lots of weird parts about the film, but this is the first one where I was okay, this is a really strange reaction. So she basically says to him, yes, I want to do it, but I'm not ready. And when you hear me sing this song, I will be ready. And then you can do it even if I say no, which is really weird, but we'll get back to that in a moment. So basically, O-Dae-soo discovers that the person behind imprisoning him for 15 years is named Evergreen. And he goes back he finds where he was imprisoned. And that's pretty ingenious because basically they were feeding him the same thing all the time. And once he found a ripped off piece of advertisement in the food, and he went to all of these different restaurants that had the same name and ordered the same thing, and he eventually was able to discover where the restaurant was, because it tasted the same, because he'd been eating the same thing for 15 years. And so he followed the delivery driver. And that's really, really good because they also, so the female character that I mentioned before is named Midu, and she and him both get kind of sick after one of these restaurants. So pretty accurate. I was actually living in South Korea the time this movie came out, and yeah, it's so weird because I watch K dramas now, and I don't really recognize the way Korea looks like now, but then, like, it definitely looked like that, and food poisoning was a concern in different places. So yeah, that's pretty accurate. But anyway, he follows the driver to where this sort of private prison slash hotel room, and he breaks in and he goes on a rampage, and he does this, like, it's really graphic scene of him removing teeth from this guy, and I couldn't watch it because it was horrible, like, ugh, so graphic. But the guy eventually gives him this tape, and on the tape he listens to an interview between Evergreen and the guy who runs the prison, and basically Evergreen says, "I am doing this because Odesu talks too much." And then Odesu was like, "Talks too much? What does that mean? I talk too much." And he, like, goes back in his life and he tries to think about different times when he talked too much. And eventually what happens is they discover, Midu and Odesu, they discover that Evergreen and Jiwon, they went to the same high school. And the whole reason he was imprisoned was because Evergreen's sister was named, I think, Sura or something like that, or Suna, maybe it was Suna. Anyway, she committed suicide, and we're trying to figure out why she committed suicide. And basically, Odesu and Jiwon kind of remember that it was because she had this bad reputation as somebody who slept around and that she was pregnant, and that's why she committed suicide. But it turns out that Suna, I think her name is, was the sister of Evergreen. And the reason she committed suicide was a lot more creepy than just that there were these rumors, because they went to this Catholic school. So basically, Odesu, when he was a teenager, right before he left to live in Seoul, he saw Evergreen, that's not his name, but, like, Evergreen, basically saw him and Suna together in a sexual encounter. So basically, he saw a brother and a sister have sex together, and he told his friend Ji-woon this information, just, like, offhand, like, "Oh wow, I just saw this crazy thing." Then he left for Seoul, and Ji-woon spread this rumor, and this rumor was the reason why Suna killed herself. And it's not exactly clear because Odesu says later that Evergreen killed her and it wasn't suicide. But we do see Evergreen's point of view, where he is struggling to hold on to his sister, and his sister is, like, basically like, "Oh, I have no regrets, but remember me," and then falls, and then she dies. So basically, the 15 years of punishment is because he was gossiping about Evergreen and his sister, and Evergreen believes that that caused his sister's death. And he also believes that the pregnancy rumors were just a rumor, and that, she wasn't really pregnant, but she started to display signs of being pregnant. But that seems a bit dubious. She probably was pregnant. Um, yeah, and then, so as part of this revenge plot, Evergreen uses hypnotism to make Odesu and Mido fall in love. But Mido is Odesu's daughter. She didn't immigrate to Sweden as he suspected. That was all a lie. Um, yeah. Um, so, and she sings the song that she mentions eventually, and they are intimate. So, at the end of the movie, Odesu discovers this, and he's basically like begging Evergreen not to tell Mido. And he cuts out his tongue, and it's like he's very contrite and stuff. And Evergreen eventually commits suicide as well because he realizes. So basically, Evergreen makes the decision because there's a box. So basically, uh, Evergreen gives Odesu a box, and in the box is like a family album kind of thing, and it's like pictures of him with his daughter before he was uh, imprisoned by Evergreen, and then it's pictures of his daughter throughout her life, and then you realize that the daughter is Mido, and you realize that they had this relationship much like Evergreen had with his sister. And so, before this confrontation between Odesu and Evergreen, there's the same kind of purple box which is sent to Mido. And that's why uh, Odesu is begging Evergreen not to let Mido open the box. So she never discovers that the the secret, right? And after Evergreen commits suicide, Odesu goes back to the lady who hypnotized them and says basically like, hypnotize me and I don't want to remember. And she says, okay, there will be Odesu and there will be a guy named the monster, and the monster will know the secret, and the monster will die when he's 70 years old. And then the last scene is Odesu and Mido hugging, and uh, Odesu is smiling in the beginning, and you think, well, that's strange, but then the smile kind of becomes a weird sort of grimace of pain. And I think that that's the plot of the movie, and I I thought that the movie was really well done, but I think that it's a very troubling film. And I think that it's a troubling film for the content of it and the violence of it, right? Like the graphic depiction of removing teeth is crazy, and it does have some really great action scenes. Like there's a corridor where he is fighting, and it's kind of a reference to Kurosawa's. Um, it's not Kurosawa film, but it's a film by the same studio named Harikiri in English, where uh, a samurai is fighting all of his enemies at once, and it's just like this brutal battle, and you know he's gonna lose. But Odesu actually wins in the end. Um, so I think that's a good part about this project is that I get to see all of these references in films to each other. So I think that it's a really well made film, but it's troubling, as I said, because of the content, but also the perspective of the film. So the film is told entirely through Odesu's perspective and also Evergreen's perspective. And the women are voiceless. They say things, but for example, Evergreen's sister only speaks in Odesu's memory and in Evergreen's memory. And she never says anything confrontational or antagonistic towards Evergreen. So I think it's clearly his memory playing tricks on him. Like, he wants to remember his sister as this woman who he had a relationship with, but it doesn't make any sense. Her voice has been completely erased. And the same thing a little bit with Mido as well. Like, her voice has also been erased by having this like weird like assault fantasy basically, where Odesu is forgiven because he is like morally virtuous and he's suffered so much, you know. And it's weird that that attempt is sort of like pushed aside and the movie doesn't really talk about it, but the other things the movie does talk about, like the movie talks about um, the like it equates gossiping as being worse than attempted sexual assault or worse than incest, you know. So it has this weird moral ambiguous compass which doesn't make any sense. But the thing that I wanted to finish with is like a question. So if you made it this far in my review, I, it's a complicated film, so I don't know how I would rate it. Probably between 6 and 7. But my question would be, is do you think Odesu made the right choice in begging Evergreen not to show the box to Mido? Because basically, you are protecting her from this horrible realization that she had a relationship with her father, which was not great. And I think by actually revealing the truth, you would protect her from things which would happen in the future. Because if Odesu survives, I mean, maybe he would want to be in her life as an actual father figure and not a lover figure, but probably they wouldn't have a relationship. And I think that would be better than pretending like they do in the end. I don't know. I thought, like, I can understand why he made that decision because he was panicked and, clearly not thinking straight after 15 years. And I think that the hypnotism aspect of the movie, I think, is its weakest part because it's kind of unclear how old Mido was when they when she left, when Odesu left or was kidnapped or whatever. So it's kind of unclear, but there probably wasn't any reason for the name to be changed, and Mido was her name, although Evergreen was taking care of his daughter, so maybe he changed the name or whatever. But, she was old enough to have a conversation on the phone with Odesu and his friend. So there is a possibility that she would remember what her dad looked like, And granted, it's 15 years later, and he has changed physically a lot. But I think that I would recognize my parents, right? And I haven't seen them in like 15 years, whatever. I know it's different because I'm an adult, but it's kind of strange. So I didn't like the hypnotism plot, and yeah, I just don't think that it's very realistic. But the movie is completely not realistic also, so you can't really criticize it because of its realism. I just thought it was a bit icky, like morally ambiguous. and kind of gross in the things that it concentrated and gross in the things that it didn't concentrate on. So I think that it does seem to be a film really from 2003. You know, it seems stuck in that time, and I think that people really kind of really like this film. So I don't know. What did you think? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'm trying to have 100 subscribers by the end of Christmas. I have 94 currently, so I think we can get 6. If you like the kind of thing I do, please subscribe to Patreon. I have a Patreon, and it's kind of like a role play where you can be a lord or a lady, a fake lord or a lady. And if anybody subscribes to the Patreon, we will give 50% of the money to some kind of charity that the patrons will choose. Just because obviously this kind of review that I just did probably not going to be monetized because of the content of the film. So I would like to be able to talk about whatever films I want. So the Patreon is a way to support me doing that. All right, thank you for your time. Bye-bye.